Today, uh, I want to talk about the American Revolution because I watched Ken Burns' documentary on that. You guys know that I like studying history. So uh, I had a big awakening, some years ago. Yeah, that when I realized that everything, not everything, but a lot of what I learned about American history in grammar school and even high school was not true. Yeah. Now, it's very interesting, this, because the American Revolution is the glory, what we did for the world, instituting democracy. And what were the first lines in the Declaration? It is, these truths are self-evident that all men are created equal. Da, 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 da. So everybody's supposed to be equal, and that's what they were fighting about. Actually, Ken Burns did not say this literally, but when you look at what they were fighting about, yes, there was something about these wonderful ideals, but a lot of it was about resources and land, because the British had drawn a line on the east side of the Appalachians and said that the colonists could not go beyond that and claim land beyond that belonged to the Indians. Well, the colonists wanted to go and claim that land, you know. And also, of course, the whole thing about the taxes and just basically, stop telling us what to do. You're not here. You don't live with us. You don't know what's going on. Okay, so, the way it was presented in grammar school, the 13 colonies just came together and formed a union, the United States of America. Actually, in the colonies, you had so many different kinds of people from many different kind of cultures, many different countries. Many of them did not speak even the same language. And so trying to get them together to work as a union against Britain was like, I don't know, trying to get oil out of sand. It was so difficult for the people to cooperate because guess what? The self-centered thought. And everybody's sticking up, my colony, because they were actually seen as different states, almost like different countries. Yeah. And so to come together was really difficult. Yeah. And they, eventually declared their independence, but it took years after that to form a confederation and create a constitution. And of course, in the Constitution, they had to compromise on so many things to get everybody to join. Yeah, so that's why Washington, D.C. has a greater population than the whole state of Wyoming, but they have no voting representation in Congress. But Wyoming has 2 senators, exactly the same number of senators as California, the most populous state, has. So we're living with a lot of these compromises that were made almost 250 years ago. Yeah. And they realized that it would have to be revised, and they said that. Of course, now maybe we're not quite as divided into states, although still somewhat. We're divided into Republicans and Democrats. So again, difficult to come together. Yeah. Washington, yeah, was seen in history. I mean, he was our first president. He was the general who won the war. triumphant. He's fantastic. He did the one thing that was quite good that he did is he did not want to be a dictator. And so after his I think he was 2 times as president, then he refused to run again. They didn't have a law saying he couldn't run again at that time. That law didn't come until FDR was, So, but the documentary goes over all these battles. If I had done the documentary, I mean, I'm not so interested in battles. I know many people are, and I studied history in college, so I know that history is always written about battles and who wins a war. And so in the documentary, they're doing all this stuff about, his maneuvers, and they have a map, and the British went this way, and Washington went this way, and then this and that. It's like, I'm not so interested in that, guys. But they did sneak in a bit of stuff that I was interested in. First of all, about the battles, how I dealt with that. Because I tend to look at things through a Buddhist perspective. Washington in American history is a fantastic hero. The karma he created. Yeah, because war is designed, the person or the team who won the war is determined by who had the fewest people killed and killed the most people. Yeah. So if you were really good at killing a lot of people, and they had muskets and cannons, but they were fighting a lot with swords, hand to hand, killing living beings standing in front of them who were total strangers that they did not know, but who they were told were the enemies. And the person who's the commander, because he encourages everybody to kill, creates the karma of killing of every single person that is killed. So the karma George Washington created, although he has a fantastic reputation, is not good karma, and his next rebirth I shudder to think about. Yeah. So it's a good example of success in terms of being popular and having the approval of ordinary beings has nothing to do with whether you're virtuous or not and what your future life is going to be. So if we as a bunch of people, practitioners, understand that, then we stop worrying about our reputation. Yeah. And we focus on our virtue. If people like us, approve of us, it's a free world. They can have their own ideas. Yeah. But we're not going to hate them, and we're not going to kill them, because other people's opinions, sticks and stones may break my bones, but opinions will never hurt me. Yeah. So, it's a good Dharma lesson when you think about this. When I was in China some years ago doing pilgrimage, I remember we stopped at one, coffee shop made of bricks out in the desert somewhere. And there were pictures on the walls of the, what were they called? Not the team of four, the gang of four, all over. And one of my Chinese friends said, these people are famous in China, but where are they right now? Lower realms. Yeah. So it's the same thing. George Washington also was an incredible racist. Yeah. Um, it was difficult when the war started for the Indians and for the slaves. Okay. Some slaves fought on the side of the British because the British told them they would be free if they won. Some slaves were forced to fight on the side of the colonists because their owners told them they had to. Many Indians fought on the side of the British, again, because they thought that they could maintain their land if the British won, because the king had put that line there. Yeah. At the end of the war, okay, well, before the war ended, what did Washington do? He went over that line into the part that's west of the Appalachia. And the film shows this incredible scene that, just was so painful to watch, that he went in with the intention to subdue the Indians. He came to a village that had been prosperous, who had, relatively nice cabins made of wood, freezing cold, but better than, most people. They had fantastic crops, corn that was very high, beautiful orchards. Yeah. What did Washington's army do? Chase all the Indians out and then burn everything. The houses, the crops, the orchards, their whole livelihood, so that these people could not return to their own land. Yeah, that's George Washington. At the end of the war, yeah, then they had to figure out, well, because the colonists won, well, they gave no rights to the Indians. Yeah, in the settlement papers or, things like that, Constitution, the Indians weren't even included, even though everything was their land. The slaves, okay, the slaves who or I should say this, the African Americans who were free people before the war could continue to be free. All the slaves whose masters had them join the war, regardless of which side they were on, even they fought for the colonists, had to go back to their owners, and people had, if people could find them, they got a reward for returning them to the owners. Yeah, nice. You risk your life on the side of the colonists, and then they say go back to your slave owners. It really makes me shudder, Okay, what else? Yeah, and just thinking, because I was saying that so much of the videos, of the documentaries were about the battles, and just how history is recorded about battles and who conquered who. And it deals very, very little with the actual experiences of the people who lived at that time. Yeah. It only deals with their experiences when these people rise up and there's a revolution. Outside of that, the history books talk about the government, the wars, and a little bit about the economy. But that's kind of it. Yeah. What I'm interested in is what was the experience of the people living there. So in the documentary series, they also put in quotes from people who were alive at that time. And I found many of those quotes really, they rung true in my heart. Yeah. the women who were quoted, by and large, just saw the war as a killing field. Yeah. And even Abigail Adams, yeah, she was quoted a lot. She was the wife of the second president, John Adams, and the mother of, was it the fourth president or fifth president, John Quincy? I think fifth, maybe. Okay. But she and her husband, John Adams, who became president, he really relied on her to discuss things with and really valued her opinions. And they were corresponding during the war. And what she wrote, so much of it just talked about the tragedy of so many people getting killed and how useless war is, how destructive it is. Yeah. And how, with all the men going off to war, the women who, had zero rights, even after the revolution, zero rights, even after the Civil War, zero rights. Not until about 100 years ago could the women vote. Yeah. But with the men off to war, the women had to not only cook and clean and raise the kids, but they had to plant the crops and harvest the crops and do all the work the men did, because men were off somewhere. Yeah. So, the whole revolution, while the articles of Declaration of Independence and the values that were put forth by, who was it, Thomas Jefferson or Thomas Paine, whoever wrote those things. Yeah, everybody's created equal. Everybody must have a say in the government. People must be treated equally. In the minds of the colonists, what we call conventional freedom politically, didn't apply to anybody but white, rich, landed men. Everybody else, Indians, African Americans, women, poor people, indentured slaves, who were often white people, who were indentured servants, I think it was called. Yeah, all those people had no rights. Yeah. So, I still believe in the rights that they put in the founding documents, and those rights really inspire me, and that's what I want for the country. And we have a long way to go. So now I understand. I forget, some president recently, I don't know if it was Obama or somebody, said we have to strive to make a more perfect union. How about we have to strive to make a union of, the same values that apply to everybody and are lived for everybody? Okay. Now that brings up the question, if everybody's free and everybody has liberty, then is it a free-for-all? We can just, everybody does what they want to do? Okay, we're only, 20-something people. So if we said tomorrow, everybody can do what they want to do, nobody has to cook, nobody has to clean, no, everybody just does what they want. Yeah, if we do it for one day, what's going to happen? Yeah, if it were snowing, which thank goodness it isn't, the snow wouldn't get shoveled. Nobody would cook the meals. Everybody would just go in the refrigerator and forage for themselves. Everybody would leave their dirty dishes in the kitchen. Nobody would wash it. Nobody would clean up the mess on the tables and everywhere else. Yeah. And, all the correspondence would not get answered. Nothing would get done because we have liberty. Okay? So so we interpret liberty to mean I can do whatever I want. I'm free. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. So, as the old thing goes, then I can scream fire in the middle of a crowded auditorium. Oh, maybe I can do that at the Kennedy Center when Trump is there. Go and scream fire. Yes. Well, no, it doesn't mean that. We have to, my freedom cannot impinge on other people's happiness, and their freedom cannot impinge on my happiness. Yeah. Or if it impinges because we want diverse things, then we just have to see the other person's needs and desires as valuable. What does that remind you of? Exchanging self with others. Yeah? Whose needs, whose desires are most important? It depends on who you call I. And if you have a vote, because we do believe in democracy, that's what we fought for, whose rights and wishes are more important? Those of all sentient beings minus one, or mine, because I'm the minus one. Yeah. Whose desires are more important? Yeah. So when we don't get our way, then at least we can say, well, somebody is happy with getting their way about this. Yeah. I'm not talking about, rejoicing when somebody else kills somebody or this kind of thing. But, the things that we get all upset about, I'm not on the rota. What do I have to do this for? So-and-so did this and that. Yeah. We rejoice. Because we're all sentient beings minus one. Their happiness is more important than mine. Okay? So, I see a big semblance between the stated values of the revolution and what the Buddha said. The Buddha kind of gave us the way, the teachings, to make our minds think in that way. Okay. Talking about the war also makes you think, what is freedom? Yeah. And so there's conventional freedom, and then there's ultimate freedom. Yeah. Which one did the Buddha teach us? It wasn't how to win the wars. Yeah. It wasn't how to oppress other people to get our way. The Buddha taught us about freedom from cyclic existence. Yeah. And freedom even from the cognitive obscurations, so that we could be of the greatest benefit to everybody else. Yeah. So, when we have to give in with some of our conventional freedom, to remember we're working towards ultimate freedom from samsara. Yeah. Freedom from having a body that gets old and sick and dies. Freedom from attachment to resources. When you have that kind of freedom, you're not going to fight a war with anybody. Okay? So that's just some of, what I was thinking about in watching this series. So if any of you watch it, I'd be interested in hearing what you think about it too.